The new Electoral Act Amendment Bill, recently forwarded to President Muhammadu Buhari by the National Assembly, is raising lots of dust. Should the president sign the bill into law, all political appointees in his government would no longer be eligible, either as voting delegates or aspirants during the conventions or congresses of their political parties. Unlike what was obtainable in the past, when most APC ministers and commissioners took a leave of absence to contest their party's primaries and later went back to their jobs after they lost, that grace is no longer available. Top on the list of the aspiring appointees to be affected by this new amendment are the Minister of Transportation, Right Honourable Chibuke Amechi, Minister of Interior, Ralph Aregbesola, and Minister of Works and Housing, Babatunde Fashola. They are believed to have presidential ambitions, even though they have yet to declare their interests. Well, that's some speculation there this morning, but I just feel like I fail to see the point of muddying the waters. Let's not forget that we've been at this electoral amendment palaver since 2018, and President Buhari has been rejecting. It's been going back and forth for years now. The last rejection, he gave his reasons, and it was to do with sort of tying parties down and not giving them options in terms of their mode of primaries. He objected to only having direct primaries enshrined in law and how that would restrict, limit the political parties. So all the National Assembly was expected to do when they returned from their Christmas break was to have direct and indirect primaries as an option. They now decided to muddy the waters, adding a consensus clause there. That was the Senate, and the House of Reps later adopted that. And now we have this other issue. And my worry is that this can cause the president to reject the bill, to withhold his assent yet again. And if that happens, it will be a complete disaster, because we're now looking at going into the next general election with an Electoral Act of 2010. How can we still be having, why are we citing, really, in terms of electoral process, is now an archaic law as far as I'm concerned. So many advances have been made. We should have an Electoral Act that, reflects that. Another thing I found really interesting is that this new bill that the president is supposed to consider contains a clause saying that nothing will prevent a party member who is aggrieved from approaching the courts, the Federal High Court to be precise. And you'll recall, well, you would know definitely, PDP and APC, the two biggest parties in Nigeria, have had cause to suspend, even expel party members from going to court before they exhausted the internal mechanisms of the parties, which is what is held in each party's constitution. So this might also cause another problem. I just want the road to be clear for the passage of this bill. And anything that could cause a problem is really such a worry at this point.
Okay, your fears are well placed. The concern is that we may find ourselves back in the 2018-2019 situation, whereby the president found cause to reject the bill, the Electoral Amendment Bill, thrice. And then at the end of the day, it was said that if the bill was assented to, then of course there would be no enough time for INEC to give effect to his provisions. So this is deja vu. And, many persons feel that this will not be the case this time. But the concern that has been raised in this story, front page of This Day newspaper today, is not new. We noticed this as early as last week, when we pointed out that some APC governors object to the bill as amended, as re-amended, and that they're likely to lobby the president to veto it a second time. If he vetoes it a second time, then, of course, it means that we may be back to that 2018-2019 situation, which will be most unfortunate, because the concern of most Nigerians is getting a proper electoral framework that can deliver credible elections. What are the contentious issues? Now, the one that, the This Day newspaper concentrated on is Clause 84 of the bill, wherein the lawmakers in their own wisdom said that, look, anybody who wants to contest in the primaries will have to resign his position first. And that if you are a government appointee and you are holding a position, you cannot be a delegate at the primaries. The assumption here is that previously, the governors were too powerful, and that these governors, they would just take their delegates and then their appointees and use them as delegates, and of course you know how they will vote, which was the major issue in the primaries conducted recently in Ekiti State, with 7 other aspirants saying that most of the people that were deployed as electoral officers and delegates were sympathetic to the choice of the governor. The second issue also is that, look, if you want to go and take part in the primaries, you will have to resign your appointment. Whether you are a minister or you are a commissioner or you are a special advisor. Previously, people even went ahead and contested elections. If they lost out, then they will just return to their old positions. So this is, the new provision under that clause 84, as reconsidered by the National Assembly. But the basic question with regard to it is that, can you legitimately deny an individual the right to seek elective office, whatever may be his circumstance? The Constitution of Nigeria allows you the freedom of choice. It allows you the freedom of association. It allows you to make your own decisions and to seek elective office. Once you meet the provisions, you meet the recommendations or the stipulations in the Constitution of the Federal Republic. So that provision in the Electoral Act, it may be argued, may seem to be unconstitutional. And to the extent of its unconstitutionality, therefore, null and void. And that, I suspect, is what the governors, the APC governors who are opposed to it, are likely to push. But it's not the only contentious part of the Electoral Act, hence the anxiety about whether the president will veto it a second time. The other key issue has to do with the definition of consensus. The lawmakers decided in re-amending the bill to define consensus very strictly, not just consensus, the meaning of direct, indirect, and consensus. With consensus, the definition of consensus is the issue. It means that, look, everybody, every member, every delegate that is going to agree to that consensus must sign.
Yeah.
There must be concrete evidence. If one person says he's not part of it, then it will not stand. And the argument is that this is also an attempt to check the influence of the governors. As to the point about, only people who take part in the primaries can go to court, well, that is also contentious. That is the provision in Section 35, subsection 2 of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill as proposed. And what it says is that, look, if you were not party to the primaries, then, of course, you cannot go to court to raise questions about academic qualification, about birth certificate, or about other, issues arising from whatever form you may have succeeded in other issues you may have submitted to INEC. And only yesterday I was talking about it, that there are two cases in this case, Lawrence versus PDP and others, right? In which case the person who went to court was not did not take part in the primaries. There's also the famous case of Doyediri and the APC in Bayelsa State, affecting a man called Eremi, who was deputy governor to David Lyon. I think that's the name of the guy. Yes. Now, Doyediri did not take part in APC primaries. He was a concerned party, involved in the process, and he went to court. And the Supreme Court said, on the basis of the lack of qualification and misrepresentation by Eremi Yangyo, that the APC that had been declared by INEC would lose the ticket, and that was how Doyediri became governor. Okay, where does this leave the right of individuals in society? So there are clearly issues, within that Electoral Act as amended, as re-amended also. But what people are saying is, the president should just sign, because most Nigerians are interested in the point about electronic transmission, which can push forward the integrity of the process. And people are also saying, pass the law, we will come back to it. But let us see what happens. But I just hope that there will be no subterfuge. And, at the end of the day, the process of getting ready for 2023 will not be further delayed or derailed, as we saw in 2018-2019.
Well, we certainly hope so. That's all on the news headlines. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll have Rosa Sadiri, Adeswa Marwan, and Aaron Akejala to give us updates on African business, COVID-19, and sporting activities across the globe. Stay with us. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Our dependable Rosa Sadiri is here to give us an African business update. Good morning.
Good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning to all our viewers. Good to be with you all again to start the week. We begin with trade. It's been an interesting unfolding debates between the Center for Promotion of Private Enterprise and the electronic invoices and e-evaluator that has been introduced by the Central Bank of Nigeria. So remember, effective February the 1st, the Central Bank of Nigeria introduced a single window, a trade monitoring system that is supposed to use a benchmark spot price to evaluate what is coming into the country and what is going out using electronic invoicing. So if you want to get your Form M and you are bringing items into the country, normally there will be a hard copy invoice that you would fill out stating the amount of goods you're bringing in and the cost. So what the central bank is trying to do is that with the electronic invoicing, and we talked about this before, they want to make sure that there is no over-invoicing to avoid fraud, whereby if you're going to bring in goods worth, I don't know, $500,000, you don't say it's actually $800,000, and then you pocket the extra $300,000. So that's what they were the central bank has been trying to avoid. However, the Center for Promotion of Private Enterprise says that this is going to introduce more red tape and is also going to cause matters to be more difficult for traders, more bureaucracy and more red tape and more cost is their argument. They also said that trade is under the purview of customs, which is overseen by the Ministry of Finance, and therefore the central bank should not be making any incursions into trade matters. So that's their argument. Although on the flip, and this anyway, our viewers can make up their minds of this debate. The flip side of this is that trade imports involve foreign exchange. I mean, the circular that was signed by the central bank when they introduced this single window was the CBN's Director of Trade Policy, I think it's Mr. Naji is his name. So the CBN has a trade policy department that reviews trade because trade requires foreign exchange, and so invariably the central bank would have to be involved in this. And we've talked about Airtel with the ports. We've talked about the other issues with human elements, making things difficult for tech. So you can, on the one hand, understand why the central bank wants to use technology to streamline this matter. A PlayStation 5, for example, goes for about what, $500? If you put on your invoice that if you are bringing in a PlayStation 5 for $900, the system is going to be flagged. I think there's a 2.5% threshold where if you go over the spot price, the system automatically flags it. So again, the CPP here seem to think that this is going to be a problem. And again, it's an interesting unfolding debate on trade, although primarily technology is supposed to make this easier. We move from trade to telcos. Airtel Africa on Friday released their 9-month earnings for 2021. And their net profit grew by 97%, so I think about $514 million. Airtel reports their earnings in dollars. Nigeria led the way in terms of revenue for each segment. Revenue from Nigeria was 29%. Eastern Africa as an entire block was 24%. Francophone Central Africa was about 19%. We had the CFO of MTN Nigeria on the show on the Global Business Report last week to go over their full year earnings. It's the same story across for both of these telco giants. For Airtel Africa, voice was up by about 16%, voice revenue. Mobile money and data revenue was up 37%. So it was healthy across the board with, as far as their numbers are concerned. And then again, for the MTNs and the Airtels of this world, Nigeria led the way. We are hopefully, fingers crossed, should have the CEO of Airtel Africa later this week on the Global Business Report. So very much looking forward to talking to him about a whole bunch of stuff as far as the telcos, mobile money, and so on and so forth. To Kenya. This is interesting. Kenya's Monetary Policy Committee of Kenya's Central Bank has a hotel survey that they carry out. And which, if you think about it, tourism in Kenya is huge. It's forecast to bring in about $1.5 billion into Kenya this year as the economy reopens. But with the survey that they carried out recently, forward bookings have been receding. So forward bookings are essentially bookings that are going into the future. So 15% of the survey respondents said it's because of the Omicron variant. So it's just 15%. Others are because of some operational issues. But here's something very interesting I found out about this. Apparently, hotel bookings in Kenya are either on short notice or they're walk-ins. So there's two ways to look at that. You can either say for each grade of hotels from 1-star to 5-star, they're probably all on a similar level playing field of quality to where somebody will just fly in and just walk into any one of the hotels and just book one. Or there's probably a trust deficit with booking hotels online to where you're not sure what you're getting into and you want to do it when you get there. So I thought that was interesting. But most of the respondents said that the bookings are either short notice or walk-in clients to their hotels. But again, only 15% said Omicron is a result. I think bookings for April are supposed to be up because it coincides with when schools are going to be letting out. So tourism, very important. And speaking of tourism, back to Nigeria, I just noticed this. A skating rink has opened up in Lekki, a new one. And families need more options as far recreational options in terms of skating rinks, bowling alleys, and amusement parks. Not only is it going to bring more tax revenue for the states where they're in, I know, by the way, I saw this was on Instagram, so I hate to bring this back up, but that Twitter ban, what it did for advertising for small businesses in Nigeria, the damage is still going to be recorded for a while. I just randomly saw it on Instagram that just opened up. Hey, well, by the way, the Winter Olympics have started. Did you see Nigeria's delegation for the Winter Olympics? I think it was just one person.
Yeah, it's one.
This is how you get more kids skating and representing the country in the future. So you gotta, that's our business update.
Thank you, Reuters. That's Samuel Epefan.
Yeah.
He's a French person, well, born in France,
but
decided to fly the flag for
Nigeria,
which is
so
great.
There you go.
Yeah, regarding the e-invoices, what exactly is the role of the Nigerian Customs Service again? Because this is quite baffling.
Exactly.
CBN, I mean, know your place for once.
But
isn't that the role of customs?
It is.
Import valuation?
It is. But Tunde, we've had so many issues with, look at the ports. I mean, because it's the foreign exchange dynamic of trade.
So that's what CBN can concentrate on.
Yes, and
that's
so
their ambit.
Exactly, because you will demand foreign exchange from the central bank to be able to pay for your imports based on the banks that are involved that will be facilitating that trade. So because of that FX demand, they don't want to be giving out more FX to fraudulent invoices, which is why they're bringing this in. So true, customs, but hey, look,
you said it. You said more bureaucracy equals more costs, and those costs are usually in corruption, quite frankly. So we actually need a lot less red tape.
True.
So I don't understand this incursion.
So again, it's an e-invoice, so it's electronic. So it's supposed to make it seamless. In the short term, when it comes to adoption of these new things, there might be some wrinkles here and there. But in the long term, you get used to it and hopefully brings those costs down. I'm all for technology, making this easier. I kind of see where the CPP is coming from, but I think they should just talk to the central bank more and see how it works.
The statement that was issued by the Center for Promotion of Private Enterprise was signed by Dr. Muda Yusuf.
Yes.
Dr. Muda Yusuf used to be the Director General of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Yeah. And the pith of his submission is simply that this places extra burden on businesses. And if his agency is involved in the promotion of private enterprise, he's talking about extra burden on business processes, particularly coming from a government that is interested in providing an enabling environment for investment and making things easier, which is, we even have an agency, in that regard, with a lady in charge of the ease of doing business in Nigeria. So to what extent does this serve the purpose of the ease of doing business? Now, the statement by Muda Yusuf is calling for the scrapping of this e-evaluator, e-monitoring process. And it's on the basis of that the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise argues that it's not the function of the Central Bank of Nigeria. That is the function of Customs and the Ministry of Finance. However, we have been saying here that the Central Bank of Nigeria is overstretched. That the people in the fiscal policy side of government, they've not been doing their job. And hence you find the Central Bank of Nigeria, having to carry more than, well, I won't say more than it can chew, but it feels, the other day I said the vacuum theory. When I was in government, we call it the gap theory. Right. If you don't do your job, people who are more forward-looking will just step in and do the job. They will fill the gap. And you find that the Central Bank of Nigeria has been carrying the weight of both monetary policies and fiscal policies in this environment. So it's not to blame the CBN for trying to do something that he considers to be in the national interest. It is to argue that the people on the fiscal side of the Nigerian economy should wake up. They play possum. CBN of Nigeria under Emefiele has done more for agriculture in Nigeria than the entire Ministry of Agriculture. That even does not even have a register of farmers. They quarrel, they argue over the register of farmers. What kind of characters are there? And they have been kept there. Some of them have been there for 8 years. So I will not blame the CBN, but I think that the CBN should engage with these stakeholders who are saying, that the CBN is crossing the line. Now, as for Airtel, well, I mean, it's a no-brainer that Nigeria is the biggest market. It's the same, for every other major provider of telecom services. Right.
We
have the numbers.
Right.
Okay, this is a country of over 200 million people. And as you can see, even from my own example, we like to talk. If you give me 1 hour, I will still be chatting, talking.
3 hours.
Oh, you have extended it to 3 hours. So we're Nigerians. We're very oral people. So it's a natural market for that kind of business. Yes. But when you mentioned Airtel, what came to my mind is the promotion of my friend and brother, Emeka Opara, who has now been promoted Vice President Corporate Communications of Airtel Africa, which is office in Dubai, UAE. So I want to use this opportunity to congratulate him and to say that Airtel Africa.
Okay.
Now Airtel Africa.
I thought there would be implications.
Okay. No. Emeka Opara knows that there will be implications. Okay. Certainly, he can't just go to Dubai supervising 14 countries and think that he will get away with that. The next time I see him, he knows there will be implications. And then finally, of course, I wanted to ask you about the story I saw on BBC this morning about the fact that landlords, tenants will now be asked to pay in Nigeria on a monthly basis. That there is a bill like that before the National Assembly,
right,
and the Lagos State government is also supporting it. Why punish landlords?
Right.
What do you think about that? Because the standard thing is to pay 1 year ahead. If every month you have to be chasing tenants all over the place, and that's like frustrating people who buy land and construct, estates.
Yeah, but doctor, you don't get your salary a year in advance. Your salary is paid on a monthly basis, so that's the reason why.
I see tenants.
I mean, not the tenants. So there we go. We'll see how the bill goes.
Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you so much. Thank you, doctor.
For an update on the COVID-19 pandemic, Adeswa Omoran is here with us. Good morning, Adeswa.
Good morning, Tundu. Great to be here. Good morning, Dr. Abati. Good to see you again.
Good morning.
Well, the anti-vax morning. Great to see you all. The anti-vax protests and anti-government restrictions on COVID-19 continued over the weekend. In places like Rotterdam in Netherlands, we saw massive rally where the police also had parallel rallies in the country. The police is asking for more resources and more money to be able to monitor COVID-19 protests, which they say they have been doing for a long time since the pandemic began. And elsewhere in Ottawa, Canada, the mayor has now had to declare a state of emergency. But look at those figures. The Johns Hopkins University tallies so far this morning. Over 380 million infections, at least 5.7 million people have died, and over 10 billion doses of vaccines have been administered. Russia and the West are facing off over Ukraine, but Russia battles Omicron back home. Over the weekend, we saw Russia recording daily records of infections. It's been doing this for a couple of days now, and it's no surprise that in the weekly updates by the WHO, we saw Russia coming in as one of those countries churning out the highest numbers, or one of the highest numbers in recent times. And here in Nigeria, 36 new infections and no COVID-19 deaths were recorded in the past 24 hours, and that's according to the NCDC. These 36 new infections were reported from 4 states, as well as the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. And the latest vaccination data posted by the NPHCDA, the agency in charge, in the last 24 hours shows that at least 15.9 million Nigerians have now received a COVID shot, while another 6 million plus have been fully vaccinated. The agency says across the country, the average daily vaccination is 200,000 of eligible persons. At the moment, the target for Nigeria is to vaccinate 70% of its population by the end of this year. Well, the first in-person AU summit has come to an end in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, but top on the agenda was the COVID-19 pandemic and its effects on the continent. Well, the leaders have a new health body for Africa to better coordinate measures to combat the COVID-19 pandemic and to prepare, as well as respond to future pandemics. It is to be known as the African Preparedness and Response Authority, otherwise known as the APROA. And in contrast to growing numbers of countries that are now lifting restrictions and shifting to how to live with this virus, China is doubling down on its zero COVID-19 strategy. The country's chief epidemiologist, Wu Zunyo, during the weekend said the country has no plans to adjust the policy in the time being. His point of view is that there's no other way to contain the spread of the virus at the moment. He describes the country's zero-tolerance policy as dynamic. Meanwhile, the news comes as the Chinese city of Baise, which borders Vietnam, with a population of 3.57 million people, was forced into lockdown. As at this moment, Baise is in lockdown because of 70 cases that were detected in the past 3 days. In principle, what this lockdown means is that no vehicles or people will be allowed in or out of that city. They're completely sealed off. And finally, this morning, authorities in India have approved Russia's one-jab Sputnik Light COVID-19 vaccine. It will be the second Russian-developed jab to be approved by India, because Sputnik V was actually approved in April of last year by India. The jab can be used as a booster shot, Russia has said, and the Russia Direct Investment Fund, the RUDIF, that developed this vaccine, says that it has signed deals with 7 pharmaceutical companies in India to produce 1 billion doses. Back to you guys.
Right, Adeswa, thank you for that. To go to your story about the African Union Health Organization, let's talk about what the practical impact of it could be. I mean, I'm sure the aspirations are lofty here. We only have about 11% of Africans being vaccinated, which is really poor compared to the rest of the world. But what are they thinking? Because what we saw with COVID-19, we saw COVAX and its limitations. So what exactly are they hoping to, what are the defects they're seeking to cure precisely?
Although, we do not have the details of what this new health body will do, but we do understand that it will help pool resources from African countries, and they will then respond as a united front. Because when you compare that to what we saw with COVID-19, especially in the beginning, before COVAX came into the scene, African countries were scrambling as single units to fight this pandemic, to fight a virus they knew nothing about, to fight a virus they had no enough funds to fight. As you know, a lot of countries were already dealing with economic crisis, and then there comes this virus we knew little about. We knew we had no tools to fight it, no PPEs, no vaccines. So now this body, they hope we'll be able to pool resources and fight as a continent against future viruses. And indeed, this current pandemic on the ground, as you have said, the vaccination rate is still low, so they need to do more to ensure that they push that up, basically.
Well, I think the idea by African leaders after their meeting at Addis Ababa to set up an African Preparedness Response Authority to address COVID. I think it's a good idea in principle. But at the same time, I think, isn't this coming after the fact, a bit late? Because emergency preparedness is supposed to be part of the governance process. But in terms of principle, good. We're told that the body will be given special powers to be able to report directly to governments that they liaise with. We're also told that funding will not be a problem. That's the position of the head of the AU's COVID Commission. She says, oh, nobody should worry. She doesn't think that funding will be a difficulty. But I think funding will be a difficulty because it's the main problem, whether it's regional organizations or in Africa, and it's, or many of the continental organizations like the African Union. Many of these countries, they go to AU platforms and regional platforms. They sign up to protocols that are interesting. But at the end of the day, when it comes to funding, they move back. And I hope that will not be the case in this particular instance. The concept has been endorsed, as John Inken-Saxon has pointed out, but the challenge is in giving effect to it and making sure that it's a standing authority that can help Africa to be ahead when there are emergencies. That, I think, is the problem, is the issue. And it falls within the four calabash concept in Africa about cooperation, about collaboration, about consultation and all of that, which is an old doctrine, that African leaders agreed upon. Another thing I wanted to point out is the situation in Canada, in Ottawa, where yesterday the mayor of Ottawa has had to declare an emergency because those Freedom Convoy truckers who have taken over the capital of Canada, they've been there for 10 days now, and they've shut down the entire city, and the emergency has been declared because the mayor says they are beginning to pose a threat to the safety of everybody, in Canada. And the protests have spread from the capital to places like Quebec, to Toronto, to other parts of the country. And hence, the ruling government, led by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, is saying that this is no longer about vaccine requirements. This is an assault on the government of the country. And the other leg of it is that Donald Trump has put his mouth in the matter. He's supporting the Canadian truckers. Many Republicans are also supporting them. And in the state of Florida, the head there the governor there is investigating matters of fraud involving a GoFundMe. So the protest has taken not just a national dimension, it has also taken an international dimension from the border with the United States to the center of Canada. And all of this is about anti-vaxxers, trying to gain an upper hand in this matter. But I hope that the Canadians would find a way of resolving their matter as soon as possible so that peace and common sense can prevail at the end. Thank you.